So, all right.
So this is Al and Steve, episode 8, part 1. Food is brought to you by Austin East Side Pies, pineapple and anchovy, and
oddly enough, well, maybe not oddly, but that was our first episode was actually inside of East Side Pies on Brunch. But today I mixed it up a little bit and got Italian sausage instead of pepperoni and jalapeno. And I don't know, I'm kind of regretting it. I don't know why. I mean, I love Italian sausage. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just going to pepperoni though. So anyways, yeah, go ahead.
So for first topic was student loans, and specifically student loan repayment. In this case, as you may have heard, the GOP has removed any what's it called? Deferment, but not just deferment, but also forgiveness of loans, and some of it's going to hit a lot of people really hard because things where they've been promised that they could pay over time or pay smaller amounts or whatnot, all of a sudden they're being told, no, you have to pay all this up front. And just to be very, 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 very clear for anybody who's thinking, hey, shouldn't they pay for their school? Well, yes, but in most of these cases, they already paid the full amount and then a good portion of the interest. It's the additional interest that's even being discussed. It's not whether or not they're paying for school. That's not really an issue.
Right. So you hit on a couple key points here. So, first of all, beyond the fact that, forget about student loan forgiveness, okay? They got rid of that, right? So then they added this other bullshit on top of it. So now, instead of it just being like, okay, we're not going to forget that, now they're like, we're going to force you to pay, and we'll start garnering your wages percentage-wise, according to like what you owe and how much you make and all these other things. But now there's like no way around it anymore, and they're forcing these guys to pay up. And I think there's two things going on here. One is, of course, this idea by people who didn't bother going to college or didn't think it was necessary or for whatever reason. And even if you're in the trades or anything, at the end of the day, like having an education is like invaluable, especially if it's a decent one, where you're learning more than just science and math and those things. The whole point is to get involved with other different kinds of people and get some different ideas going, and you're forced to take some of these humanities and literature classes and shit like that, so you get a well-rounded knowledge base. And and some of these you have to take some philosophy, you got to start having some courses in critical thinking or something, and like I said, the arts, you're kind of made to do some of these things as the core curriculum before you can go towards your major. And it's this whole idea of disenfranchising certain people from not even going to college, and two different ways. One is now it's they're pricing it away from the vast majority of people, and then secondly, what they're doing is limiting the education in various forms and ways, so that they don't want people to go economically, and they don't want them to learn anything outside of what's going to create, cogs in the wheels of capitalism. They just want you to go for science, technology, and math, things like that, things that they can utilize.
Increasingly, it's questionable whether they even want you to go for that, but...
Yeah, I mean, they want you to go for that if you're smart, as long as you don't learn anything else and have any critical thinking skills.
Or state an opinion about anything that's going on in the world while you're there.
Or even even have one, or even be informed enough to have one.
Right.
They just want to feed you their propaganda. So yeah, so anything that's outside, of anything, any kind of history, any type of philosophy, anything that makes them feel bad about themselves or their history, they don't want to teach it. And then they project this guilt and shame, and then say it like, well, I don't want my children feeling bad about being an American or being white. Well, you know what? They should know this stuff, and they should know that you should teach them that, look, these things happened, they were wrong, and let's not repeat them, right? But these adults can't even process that kind of fucking thought, and I'm sure a kid could probably do a better job than some of these fucking adults because they're pathetic. But anyways, they can't do it within themselves. How are they going to do it society-wise as a whole nation? Most of these people are just egocentric idiots anyways, So, so, that's one aspect going on here. But I think this is kind of like feeds into, and the second one is, well, I didn't go to college. Why should I have to pay for somebody else's school when I didn't go? And as Al brought up, most of these people paid that shit off in spades, or they're close to paying it off, or something like that. And then I'll take it one step further. This shit should be free. Any advanced society, any society that wants to progress, any society that wants to have a decent living, a life for its people in general, should just get this education should be free.
State schools, at least. I mean, I
Yeah,
understand
state
private
schools.
and
Yeah,
whatnot, but state
obviously,
schools,
obviously, I'm talking about state schools.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can't have that. You can go to a private school if you want to learn bullshit from some bullshit, but you know, it. So, yeah, you got these two things going on, and then maybe even a third. And the other thing is too is here's the economic aspect of this whole issue. You know, some people are arguing that, well, this is so they pay back because we're in debt and blah blah blah, and they shouldn't get away with it. But the reality is by relieving this debt from these students, that money goes into the economy. So actually, they're going to make money if they, you know, if they don't make these debt repayments. Because who's that money going to? A bunch of rich idiots. It's not going into the economy. It's not going into the economy.
You mean the money that goes to the
right? It's going to
yeah,
the banks.
Yeah,
it's going
yeah.
to the banks. So how's that helping anyone? Who is that helping? And anybody who has this attitude that like, well, I suffered and I didn't go to school, and so you should suffer too. Like, what kind of person thinks that way? What kind of person thinks that way?
Too many, but
yeah. Like, I'm like, good for you. You went to school and you did it, and you probably paid back most of it, or whatever the case. And even if you didn't, it should have been free. Kudos to you. Debt relief, you know, fine. Why would anybody have a problem with that? I can't understand it. It's just
and like so many of these programs, it's not something that they're just handing out willy-nilly, as it already was.
Right.
It was not the easiest thing to get these loans. They're making those type of loans harder to get. And in in the majority of cases, people would, like my wife, fall into this middle realm of you're making too much money to get the loan, but you're not making enough money to go to college without it. And
or your parents were when you were.
Well, right, your parents, not you personally, but yeah, your family was making too much to qualify for the loan, but you weren't earning enough.
So they create these indentured servitudes because, look, go back to the 60s. University of California, Texas even, school was basically free at state universities, basically free. Illinois was even, you know, partially, you know, mostly funded. You paid a partial. That was the norm going on in the 60s into the 70s, and then it just blew out.
And then the insane part, I know a number of people who, well, at least up until recently, were working at universities. They're not making a great living. It's not like the increase in school cost is...
No. This is not going to the professor.
Yeah.
My brother's a professor.
Right. You get my point.
He is not, like, you look, man, those salaries today, like, you could probably be, you know, if you're in a decent trade, you're probably making close or more. Like, give me a break. So, yeah. So, and to get a PhD, you're hundreds of thousands in debt. So, you know, come on, man. It's ridiculous. Anyways, yeah, so this is just an attack on education. It's an attack on economic. It's creating, you know, it's disenfranchising certain individuals, especially minorities back then, you know. Then on top of that, it's creating indentured servitudes, you know, to the system where you can't get out of this, man. It's, you know, it's slavery by wage, you know, wage slavery, and an indentured servitude to the system now that's been created.
Well, and class warfare, honestly.
Right. And then even within the universities, you know, and I don't know if we want to get into this subject right now, but yeah, maybe we'll just touch on this. Like, you know, at Harvard right now, you know, they're trying to tell them that they're not going to fund them, and then they have to, you know, expel some of these students, or they won't take students, you know, you get rid of their visas, or they shouldn't be accepting foreign exchange students for their ideas. Because of their fucking ideas, man. And this is how ridiculous it is. They're trying to expunge history. They're trying to expunge all this stuff. They're trying to come after these universities because they're teaching the truth and what really America's really about. And they're saying that, you know, that they're being brainwashed when it's exactly the opposite.
But
it's
even if it were true, I mean, if
their brainwashing.
If they could find that the students had, you know, a cache of weapons or plans to do X, Y, or Z, or any of this kind of thing, then I could kind of sort of see it. You know what?
Well, not kind of. It would be a reason.
Well, yeah, but But instead, it's like you don't, like Steve said, you don't agree with their ideas. Well, I don't care if their ideas are brilliant or stupid. They have the right to those ideas. I mean,
right. And this whole thing that if you're pro human rights and pro and anti genocide, that you're not only not only are you anti-Semitic, right, and anti-Zionism, which is what's wrong. Like, first of all, it's not anti-Semitic, obviously. There's even, it's in the Jewish community, there's a split going back 100 years. So, like, and informing, in Zionism and what's going on over there. And so you can't go there. But then they call it, anti-Semitic, which is even a stretch further. And then they say, well, you're pro-Hamas. Like, come on, man. Like, you're getting the fuck, like, you're way out of bounds here. What are you talking about, man? So, yeah, so they're cracking down on Harvard, especially because Harvard just told them to F off. Like, we don't need your funding even. And we're going to teach what we want and say what we want and do what we want.
Which all of the universities should be doing. And
they should all be doing that. So yeah, so this is an attack on education. This is an attack on individual. This is like encapsulates so many issues all into one about what's wrong with what's happening, in the United States in general. Trying to take away your education, trying to make you an indentured servitude, trying to limit your education, and petty. Just being cruel and jealousy. These smart kids, they should have to pay it back. I didn't go to college, you know what, man? Come on. When somebody gets something, I'm happy for them. I don't like begrudge them. The vast majority of people that are just trying to squeak by and they're decent and they're just trying to do what they can. Are people abusing the system? Of course, there's some, but why is the reason that they do that? They're so depressed and they lack motivation because of the society we built.
Well, and for the most part, if they come out, and it doesn't have to be a job directly related to their field, but if they come out and they get a decent job and whatnot, they're effectively paying back many times over whatever they were given. I mean,
like I said, that's money that they're saving by not having to pay it back to the banks. It's going into the economy, so it's going to make money for everyone at the end of the day. So if you're some construction worker and you're begrudging somebody who now has to pay a bank money, guess what? That could have went into your pocket because they could have fixed their house, or they could have went to your store, or they could have done what, hired you to do something. But no, they didn't. They gave it to the bank who's going to put it in some other bank somewhere else. So they can buy something over here and give dividends to someone. Yeah. Come on, man. You're never going to see that money. Why do you care where that money? Why do you care about that money? Why? Because you're cruel and you don't want to see something get something for free, or that you think they're getting for free, even though they went to school and got the education, which you lack the freaking determination to do. Like, come on, get out of here. And I'm not saying everybody who doesn't go to college is being lazy, but I wasn't for me in my 20s. I went a couple times. I wasn't ready to go through that, but eventually I did, and I'm glad I did. Even though I used to make a joke that I'll wipe my ass with that diploma because what is it? It's just a piece of paper, but. I was being
a lot of ways of looking at it. I mean, part of the way I look at mine is the number of connections that I made. I mean, I wouldn't have met my wife if we hadn't both been in college at the same time.
There's just so many things that I can bring value to beyond what most people would think is the value of the education.
Right.
So many intangibles. I mean, I guess they're tangible, but they're usually not talked about as much. Beyond the fact that you learn some specific field of expertise, there's all these other things that are going on at the university that it's just unmatched in any other arena to even at the workplace, anywhere, even things like that, because if you go into a corporation or even a small corp, it's top down most of the time, in a university there's discussions, there's different views that you can espouse, and you can have diversity where and you get into a lot of corporate cultures. Yeah, man, you got to toe the line. So, and if you're running your own business, same thing. Everybody must bow down to you, or however you feel things might work out. Anyways, yeah, I don't know.
I think that pretty much covers it, but you get the idea.
You get the idea that there's no reason for this. First of all, school should be free. Never should have gotten debt to begin with. It used to be. Why did we change? I don't know. Because some greedy son of a bitches who just thought we could make money off of this. decided that we shouldn't give people.
But
And
like
I
so
think
many
there
other
might be a
things-
racial aspect to this too. Like
Probably,
once,
almost definitely. Yeah.
once after the Civil Rights Act, this was then extended to minorities. No, you can't have that because if you educate them, this whole system is crumbling down, which is what's happening. So, because they are getting wise. We'll have that discussion one of these times too, because I think there's an enlightenment that's going on at rapid pace in the last 5 to 10 years, and people are feeling it and they're understanding it, and there's a certain feeling that's just kind of in. I don't know how to explain it without sounding weird, but I think people are really things are happening so rapidly and so fast that most people's brains can't accept it. Now, Al and I, we've kind of deconstructed over a course of 20, 30 years probably. I know in my case
Yeah.
I have. So I've slowly, incrementally, so I can accept these changes a lot quicker than I think some people who are just getting this all at once. And they're like, what the hell? Everything I believe is fine.
But again, it's not actually that you're accepting them faster. It's that you've already accepted 10 different things that they haven't recognized or haven't had to recognize. And so therefore, when you pick up the 11th one, it creates that illusion of picking things up faster because you've just been doing this
I'm
longer.
not saying, well, that's exactly what I was saying though.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you just kind of described it much better than I did.
Okay.
Okay. Anyways, let's end it there. And yeah, we'll pick it up when we get back.